a lot of like the growth over the past few years has been like letting go of like what other people perceive me to be. And so even when it comes to like podcasting and career, like I really try to like block out what other people say to me. And so they'll like say nice things to me, like I will take that in. No. And I say that because like one of the guests I had on recently, I had him on previously. So I had him on about a year ago, and then he came on again recently. And he was like, oh, wow, like you have like really improved. Like I can tell like your brain is working in certain ways. Like you call back to certain things I even forgot we were talking about. Like you've gotten really good at this. And so I think like slowly but surely I'm finding confidence in my effort more than like the outcome.
Hi guys, welcome back to the show. I'm Peter. Our co-host Mario is gone on vacation, but we have a special guest, Hannah, on the show today. Give her a special shout out. Welcome to Guys That Listen.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. I'm Hannah. Some people know me as Hanakattt because honestly there are just way too many Hannah Lees. And so yeah, Hanakattt. And I am the host of Breakups Pod. And so yeah, essentially on the podcast we talk about dating and relationships, navigating your 20s, and really just like straddling that line between Asian and American. But yeah, we keep things lighthearted. We can also like get super serious, but I think for the most part, like I just like want to know like what people are thinking, like why.
Same.
And I know Peter, like you've said, like you're a very curious person, and I think I'm like the exact same way. So I'm just like, oh, let's just dig a little deeper.
I guess we're doing that this episode.
Yeah. And so yeah, I'm super excited. And yeah, I like pretty much grew up in LA and have been doing the podcast for 3 years, and so that's the main gig right now.
So how did that start?
Honestly, it was just kind of like I've always loved talking, and it felt like a magical moment where I was like, oh, if I can like talk for a living, I think like like that is like goals. And then also like in college I like studied film and whatnot, and so it kind of felt like with podcasting, like all of my like past interests like kind of converged into this one thing. And like I like can't, I'm gonna use the corniest description ever, but it was literally like magical. Like I was like, whoa, like this is crazy. And so yeah, I've just like continued, and it's been like great just like meeting new people like you, other podcast hosts, as well as like people in our community. And so yeah, it's been super fun.
Nice. Was there a podcast moment? Because for me there was like this makes sense for me to start a podcast, because I'm sure a lot of people start podcasts this way. Like one drunken night, a couple of good conversations, and we're like, wow, we're a lot closer after this.
Wait, yeah. I will say, like, even friends I've had for like 15 years, like they've come on the podcast and I'm like, I can't believe I'm learning something new about you. And it wouldn't have happened had we not like decided to record and like be super intentional or whatever. Wow. And so, yeah, I definitely think like there have been like maybe not one moment, but multiple moments where I'm like, oh, okay, everything feels like it's like clicked.
So I think I know why, but I'm gonna ask you anyways.
Yeah.
Like, why Bulgogi Podcast?
Oh, okay. I'm gonna be transparent. Literally, it was our placeholder name.
Oh.
Like me and like my previous co-host were thinking about like what should we call this, and I was like, oh, I think like Breakups is funny. Like I literally think it's like I don't know, I have like a weird sense of humor, and so like that's really funny. And then eventually like all the other names that we went through, just like there was another podcast called it, or like it didn't stick, or we kind of like market researched amongst our friends, and we're like, oh, what do you think about this? And they're like, I don't understand it. So I was like, okay. And then me and my sister, right, we have like very similar humor, and she was like, I honestly really like Breakups. And I was like, I'm kind of sick of like thinking about names. And so I brought it up to my co-host, and she was like, I'm down. And like so far it's been like very memorable, I think, to people. But then of course like some people have like a hard time pronouncing it, so we gotta work on that. Yeah.
Hopefully not the Asians, but
yeah. No, I mean it's still Asians here and there. I get some like bulgogis, so I'm like, okay, I don't know, we'll figure it out.
How'd you figure out what topics you were going to touch base on?
I think for the most part, like these are just kind of the conversations I have with my friends, and so like very much like I'm an open book with my friends. Like I'm super vulnerable, and I like don't mind that. And then I think like in the most recent years, a lot of like the new things that have been brought up are like my dating stories. And so it's like it kind of went from like me recording me and my like 8 other girlfriends, we have like a little Instagram group chat, and after every single date I would like literally be in my car and I would do like a debrief, like I literally every single detail. And so I just have like changed formats, and like now that's what you guys get on the podcast. It's just my dating, you know, escapades, because it's been an interesting few years.
Is that, I've never heard of that.
Yeah,
like a group chat where girls talk about their dating life. Actually, I'm just gonna talk about it from a guy's perspective.
Okay, yeah. How does it go? Like post date.
I feel like a lot of times, and just to give you some like background, I don't really go on dates too much. Like almost ever. Most of my relationships formed through just being friends.
Okay.
So it's very rare. I think I've only been on one like official date in my life.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And so how do you go from like being friends to like maybe going on a date? Like, is it like established, or is it kind of like, oh, let's like hang out?
It's almost like not even a date when those things happen. Like as far as like those relationships I was in, it's just being friends and then hang out, and then no one shows up but you guys, you know, or there's like a specific plan where it's like, oh, it's just supposed to be for you guys because you guys have a common interest that no one else has.
Oh.
And then it just kind of builds from there, really.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you don't has there ever been like maybe a situation where you were interested like prior to being friends, and then you guys started dating, or is it always just friends first?
So there was one, and this one is the longest relationship, which was 10 years. And that's kind of a funny story because initially it started in middle school. And yeah, it's one of those things where you don't really count it as like a relationship, but in middle school I had like a transformation. Oh. So I was like in 7th grade, I was that nerdy kid with a bowl cut, with like a polo and like short shorts, you know, fall school uniform. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like every standard Asian kid in school. And then I had met some of, I guess, you know, the bad kids in school.
Oh, okay.
That happened to lived in my same neighborhood, and we became friends. And he was the kid that had all the attention, you know, like all the girls came up to him, and he was like, Peter, like you kind of look like a dork. We need to give you a transformation, you know?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I went from bowl cut to like spiky hair, and this is way back, so you can imagine it was a trend during that time. Super baggy cargo pants that was like down to my knees.
Oh, duh.
Yeah.
What socks were you wearing?
Oh, the long socks. you already know.
So no skin.
Yeah, no skin whatsoever. Like baby blue T-shirt and stuff like that, and the long Honda belt with like the emblem. Yeah. And then 8th grade came, and it was just like my life had changed. It was so weird because all I cared about prior was playing video games, being at home, not really doing too much, you know. And in 8th grade, it was all the kids that knew me from my class was like, is that Peter? Like, that's
right.
He looks different.
Right.
And then I would get attention from other people that I didn't know. And my ex at the time, well, kind of, you know, so-called ex, was interested, I guess. So people would come to me like, oh, she thinks you're cute. And I didn't know how to approach women at all. I still don't, to be honest. And she was, you know, there. She would send her friend and be like, oh, you should talk to my friend. She thinks you're really cute.
Okay.
So then I asked her out without even really knowing her, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, would you like to be my girlfriend? She was like, yes. I think I ran away before she even told me yes.
Okay, great.
And then she called me to confirm, like, did you ask me out? I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
So that relationship, quote unquote, lasted for like less than a week.
Oh, okay.
So she dumped me, I think, within like a week. We barely even talked. And then I didn't see her again. Well, I mean, we became friends through the years, kind of, and I didn't really think about pursuing her again until years later. Probably when I was like, 5 years later, maybe 6 years later. So right off the bat, she already knew when we started becoming closer again that I already thought some way of her prior because I had asked her out.
Oh. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. She was like, oh yeah, his crush for me like never
Yeah.
left. Like,
Yeah,
he's still
basically.
interested after all these years.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Because yeah, I'm like always like curious if like guys will kind of like intentionally go into friendships.
You know, there are for sure guys like that. I didn't have that intention because I thought that she didn't like me because she had broken up with me the first time. So I was like, oh, we're a chance that we're just gonna be friends.
Right.
So that wasn't even my intention, but I have heard of dudes that will wait, you know?
Right.
And I'm just like, I'm also the kind of guy where I'm like, really? There's so many people out there. Do you really have to be waiting off by the sidelines
Right.
to, catch this person's attention? If they like you, they're gonna like you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Because yeah, I mean, like I like have had like similar experiences like literally in middle school where like one of my like good friends like had confessed and like I didn't reciprocate, but we like continued being friends throughout the years. And like in my eyes, like I'm like, okay, we're just friends, and like I will forever like think that we're just friends, and hopefully he's on the same page.
Ooh.
But I think he's on the same page.
You don't know still?
I mean, like, we've had conversations about it, and he's like, oh, yeah, like, I'm over it. But I can't, like, help but be like, oh, if you had feelings for me once.
Lightning
like, why
has...
wouldn't you like me?
Yeah, lightning does strike twice sometimes, you know?
Yeah. So, yeah, I just, like, I think it's interesting. Because also, I think I have, like, other girlfriends who have had that experience of like, oh, I've been friends with this guy for like years, and then they confessed, and I kind of felt like, oh, maybe their like intentions weren't as pure.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know how exactly I would feel about that, but in ways I also understand, just because like feelings can develop, like they don't have to be there from the beginning.
Yeah, that's hard. I think it just depends on the person. I think very much. I'm a kind of guy where it's like if I go into something platonically, I'm always gonna leave it like that.
Okay.
The only reason why I developed into anything else for that 10-year relationship was because she kind of pushed it forward.
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
And I was very shocked. I was like, this doesn't seem very platonic. I'm also big on like concrete evidence where I don't assume anything.
Okay.
I leave up to them to tell me like, oh, I like you. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I don't know if I can interpret that any other way. So I'll take that.
Oh.
Yeah.
So then would you say like a majority of the girls that you've like been in relationships with, they like confess first or like pursued it first?
I wouldn't even say they would like confess first most of the time. They would say things where even I would feel kind of uncomfortable. You know? like the most common one, I don't know why, but I travel like a decent amount. And I'll get people that, they're my friends, but we're not super close or anything. And they'd be like, oh, take me to travel with you. I'm like, you barely know me. I could be a serial killer, Like, that's kind of crazy that you'd be willing to, like, go on, like, a 2-week trip, a month trip with, like, a stranger.
Okay, yeah. That's a little forward.
And then it would just carry on from there.
I see. Yeah, because, like, I don't know. I think, like, I'm not shy in a lot of aspects. But I do think, like, when it comes to, like, anything romantic, like, I get so shy.
Really?
Especially like when we're like out, right? Like me and my friends will go out and like I'll be like, oh, like that guy's cute, and I always regret saying something to them because they'll literally start shoving me like towards him. And I'm like, I'm scared, like I don't know what to say. I don't know how to like approach or like be normal and start a normal conversation when like I have already established like, oh, I'm like interested, or like that person seems.
Have you ever made the first move?
So I think when it comes to like literally in the wild, right? Like through mutual friends, all of that, like I will kind of like talk to the person if we have mutual friends, but with complete strangers, like absolutely not. Like I run. Like I'm literally like, I can't do this.
Well, if they approach you?
If they approach me, then yeah, great.
And you're confident at that point?
Yeah, then I'm fine because it's like, okay, like... Right, I have like a little bit of like knowledge of like where they stand. Like there must be a little bit of interest, but I guess like thinking about it like literally right now, maybe it's like I'm like afraid of rejection. You know, like I don't want to like approach them and then like literally in front of everyone, like all their friends, all my friends, like, you know, like start the conversation and then I'm like, okay, bye.
I feel like I might be the same way.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So then we're never going to be in relationships.
Yeah. Or the ones that you like want to approach cold, you know?
Right. Exactly. But like, what's like going through your head?
You know what? I've talked to one of my friends who's very similar to me. He says that maybe we need to be like, feel like a connection prior. So I'm not one of those guys where like, if a person's attractive, I know they're attractive, right?
Okay, right.
Like, I'm like, all right, she's, you know, objectively like beautiful, but I don't feel like a connection unless we talk. So therefore, I'm just like, oh, I could, you know, acknowledge that, but I don't feel inclined to go out of my way to like speak to her.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I definitely like feel the same way.
Oh, really?
In terms of like, even like I do my fair share of like online dating, and I think that has been kind of like where I like maybe like have the most dates, because I just like, I'm like, I don't know if I like you until like we literally meet face to face and like I feel the vibe.
Yeah.
You know, like I just like, even if you ask me like what my type is, like I can like generally say like, oh, like I would like them to be like this. I would like these certain values, but at the end of the day, like there's no connection like a in real life connection. And so like there's no point in texting for 2 weeks if like, I don't know, I haven't met you in person. So
would your approach be that you guys chat as little as you guys can and then meet up as soon as possible?
Oh, yes. Oh. Like, absolutely. I think, like, dating app 101 has been, like, match with them, like, Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, and then go out with them Thursday, Friday, or Saturday.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm like, I don't want to talk to you if I don't know anything about you.
Yeah.
And then also, right, like, I think one of my most, like, early dating experiences, we were texting so much. Like, it was, like, a couple hours, I want to say, like, for a week and a half. Like, it was a lot. Like, I was like, oh, I need to get on my laptop onto iMessage. Like, I can't text on my phone. And so I think, like, when I had first met him, like, I was like, okay, like, I know so much about him, and, like, I already feel so connected to him, but it was almost like, in real life, my feelings had to catch up to, like, what I had, like, processed, like, in my head, and, like, imagined him to be.
Yeah.
Like, it was just so easy to, like, make him out to this, like, perfect human being that he, like, told me he was, essentially.
Yeah.
Also, so I saw something recently on TikTok.
Okay.
And it was like this theory that like guys start at 0 and then girls start at 100. And so what I mean by this is guys, when they meet someone, like girls are rated at a 0 until like they like can build up to, let's say like whatever, 90, 100. Versus girls will see guys at 100 until they like prove them that they're like not as amazing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, do you agree? What are your thoughts on this?
See, again, I'm probably the worst person to ask about this because I don't go on dates and it's not how I process the information. But I think guys don't start at 0. I think a lot of guys start at a number because typically most guys base a lot of how they react to a person initially from their physical attraction. Yeah, so I don't think it's like a 0. I think it's, and I would also say most guys start off with their physical attraction at a very high number, or else they probably wouldn't even see you in the first place.
Oh, okay.
And then depending on how attractive you know they find you, it's very hard to knock those numbers down.
Oh.
Yeah. I've known some friends, a lot of friends actually, who they'll go on dates with someone who's like very attractive. But I'm just like, wow, this person seems like kind of like a shit person, you know? But they're like, no, but she's at least, the most honest answer is like, at least she's hot.
Oh.
And you hear that all the time.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So like guys will like take like a hot toxic girl over like the best, maybe not as hot girl.
I think there is a moment where, let's say, the toxic girl would be hard to knock off of that pillar because they find her so hot.
Oh.
A girl who's less attractive but a great personality, they'll have a harder time to admitting that they like this person.
Oh.
Yeah. Because I think there's also maybe, especially if guys are in groups where they talk a lot about their dating lives.
Oh, right.
There's like a fear of being made fun of. Like, oh, like she's not that attractive. Like, why are you going out there? I hear that a lot too. Where I'm like, maybe this person is a great person. So maybe that's why they like him. Or I meet them, I'm like, oh, this person is really cool. So what's wrong with that? And it's only until it becomes serious where the guys kind of stop talking about it.
Okay, that's so crazy.
Really?
Because I think girls will talk about it like from beginning to end of just like I don't think all girls, right? I don't want to generalize, but like at least like me and my girlfriends, like they're getting every single detail. And I really try not to like leave some things out, because I've had like some girlfriends in the past where like we'll find out after the breakup like how shit of a guy like the guy was. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I think it just like further proves that like you knew like deep down but like didn't want to share everything, which right, I get, like it's hard to like share things where you feel like, oh, maybe I wasn't being treated in the most respectful way and whatnot. But at the same time, like I think like at least like the relationship that I've built with my like close friends, it's like, oh, I should be able to share everything, with also the knowledge that like you guys will view him as a whole person and not just the things I'm complaining about.
100%. I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to ask you to, if you don't mind, doing an example rundown of how you do that within your friend groups.
Ooh.
Because I'm hearing it, you say you describe, and you want to be very detail oriented, and I feel like a lot of women are. Yeah. Guys, not as much, like we get a lot of things that just kind of like passes by, and we're like, oh, act like we didn't know. I feel like with guys, like sometimes there's never a follow up. It's like, oh, I'm dating this girl. It's like, oh, cool. Yeah. Combo moves on. Exactly. It happens pretty fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I will give you a real life recent example. And so I had been seeing this guy, and our first date, like I thought went really well, except for the fact that like there were a couple things that I was like, that was a little weird. And so the weird things were that like, so I was sitting in the booth seat. We're meeting at a coffee shop. I was sitting in the booth seat waiting for him. He was a little late, right? So he like walks in, he's like, I'm so sorry I was late, whatever. And I was like, oh, it's fine. Like, I know where you're coming from. Like, I know there's traffic. So we go up, order, and we like go back to sit down, and like he takes the booth seat after I had been sitting there. And so I was just like, oh, let me not be so nitpicky, because I feel like I just like tend to pick up on those things. It's not a gigantic deal to me, but like, right, I'm making a little mental note. Yeah. And so conversation moves on, and like I find out we have like a ton in common. Like there's definitely like that vibe that I talked about earlier there. And we eventually like continue the date, and I noticed like he was like, okay, like, like I'll see you for the next date. Like doesn't walk me to my car. So I was like, another mental note.
And you're in LA?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah, you should definitely be walking every female friend or date to their car for sure. Right.
And so, for a little bit of context, like I have a lot of like guy friends, whatever, like we've been close for like 10-15 years. And even those friends, like they will walk me to my car no matter what, no questions asked. And so I've just like gotten used to that. But also like it's Los Angeles, like just because it's daytime doesn't mean that like the outside is safe. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, mental notes, whatever. And so because like I felt like our energies like really matched and whatever, I was like, okay, like I'm willing to go out on a second date with this guy. And so second date, so cute. Like he literally was like, oh, like let's go like look at the Christmas lights. Like we can like walk around, like do hot chocolate, that whole thing. And like I'm literally like, I like love a K-drama. I like love like a little like hopeless romantic moment, like background music playing in the background in my head.
Everything's
like,
in slow-mo.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh my God, Christmas lights, so cute. And so we go, he like picks me up. He doesn't get out of his car, which is like, okay, I feel like that's like a little bit more advanced, right? And then like we go see the lights, everything's great. And like, as we're like coming back, he's like talking about tacos, and I'm like, oh, my favorite truck, like let's go. And so we go to the taco truck, we order, and we're like eating on the back of his car, and I like pretty much finish all my food, and my roommate's like, oh my God, are you at like our favorite taco truck? And I was like, yeah. I was like, do you want anything? And she was like, oh, of course. And so I'm like, okay, like I'll be right back, I'm gonna order. And so I order, come back, finish my food, and he's still eating. And like I'm done with my food, my roommate's tacos are ready, and so I go pick them up, and he's like walking to the trash can with his trash, right? And I was like, oh, thank you, right? He's throwing away my trash. And then
I think I know where this is.
And literally he's like, oh, what? And like I look at the back of his car, and my trash is still on the back of his car. And so I was shocked. I literally couldn't even hide it. I was just like, oh, I thought you were. And then like, so I grabbed my trash, and I'm walking towards the trash can. He just took it and threw it away from me. But like it like took me literally being surprised in front of him for him to like do the thing.
Yeah, like he could tell, right?
Like, yeah. And so like I saw him a couple more times, and I really like couldn't get past like just like the general, I don't know what to call it. Like I don't know if it's being considerate. I don't know if it's like being gentlemanly, or like just like thoughtful in general, because like I don't want to like take these like quote small things and like blow them out to be like, oh, you're an inconsiderate, like thoughtless person. Like I'm not saying that at all, but it's more so like, like, but like, are you thinking about me, you know?
Yeah.
So like, do you think these things are ingrained? Like, do you think like,
I think that sounds like a person who's either not been on a lot of dates, or a person who's never been in a relationship that's like that. I feel like I learned a lot of my manners from my mom specifically.
Okay.
And she's always, you know, like, oh yeah, be a gentleman. But I've learned most of my manners that have been ingrained in me through my significant others. Oh. Because I think what happens is, you know, me being a person who's always dating for a very long time, those things come out. Okay. Eventually, it's like, oh, I don't like when you do this. I don't like it when you do that. I think initially those things get let go. So, you know, like,
right.
He didn't realize it until you made that expression, right? Yeah. Imagine if he's a guy who never gets past the first date. He probably would have never even gotten that expression.
That's true.
So therefore, it's his actions are almost like reinforced. Like, oh, no one has really a problem with me doing that.
Oh, okay. And so like with like your, let's say like your ex-girlfriends, like how are they like kind of like training you? Like, are they literally
training? That's a strong word. Training.
But it is training in a sense.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it is. I can see that. I would like to use a different word, but yeah, training. I'll take it for what it is. How are they taming you?
Okay, so yeah, how are you? How are you being trained?
How am I being trained?
How are you being trained by your ex-girlfriends?
As with any kind of training, repetition is key. So it's never just like a one-time thing, right. You know?
She's really like Pavlov stalking you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, all of them are like that, I think. So, yeah, I think repetition is one way. I think also a lot of my exes have been very gentle. They're very like, they don't yell, you know? Okay. They're very soft-spoken most of the time. And I think when their demeanor changes, it almost feels like I'm in trouble. So when it's something I'm not, you know, it's never anything crazy, but it'll be like, can you stop shaking your leg?
Like, I see.
okay, I guess I should stop shaking my leg. So things like that. But now that you mention it, I don't know what things are ingrained in me due to them training me. Or if it's just something that I've like picked up, through dating people.
Oh, I see.
Because what's a thing that you would train your significant other on?
Well, with this guy, I think my biggest question was like, I had two big questions. Like, is he trainable? And also, am I willing to train him? Because I think like, right, there are certain things that like probably bother me that like hasn't bothered their like previous significant others, and so like that stuff like will need to be communicated. But I think there are some things where it was like, oh, I have a feeling or an inkling that like this probably bothered the past significant others, but like maybe they just had never communicated it or didn't feel comfortable or safe. Because I also think, right, like up till like date, I saw him for like a month. Like we went on like 6 days or something. Oh, wow. And so on the 5th date, I actually communicated like, oh, like I would just kind of like you to be a little bit more gentlemanly. But like for the longest time I was like, I don't know how to word this. Like I don't know how to like bring this up, because we're not at the level where I could just go, you stop shaking your leg, right? And so like, and I'm also like generally, especially in a relationship, like more gentle. Like I'm not like a screaming match. Like honestly, I'm more on the side of like I won't say anything. And so I also I need to like work on that. Like I think my big 2024 like relationship goal is like just to be more communicative, because I'm like a huge believer in like it's not their problem until you communicate it with them, like Agreed. I am not gonna assume that you like know certain things. So like I was really trying my best to communicate, but I was like, I don't know if I did that well. Like,
how'd you do it?
I literally was just like, oh, I don't know, like I don't know how to bring this up, so I'm just gonna bring it up. And he was like, oh, okay. And I was like, I think I would like you to be like a little bit more gentlemanly, like here and there. Like you don't need to open every door. Like I think it's just like walking me to my car and like just like generally thinking about me. And like I just like don't know if like I got the point across, because I wasn't gonna go like, oh, you didn't throw away my trash at the taco truck. Like, oh, you sat in the booth seat twice. Like, oh, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, you want to bring back the past. Right. Like, you want to talk about it, because I'm very similar. It takes me a couple times before I talk about something that I'm maybe peeved about. Because I'm trying to track if it's actually a habit. Or if it's just an off day.
Right, right.
Because sometimes that happens.
Yeah, for sure.
But if it happens like 4 or 5 times, I'm like, okay, this is a habit now.
Yeah, this is a thing.
Yeah. But I actually do remember one time where one of my exes did something where I now am very cognizant of it.
Okay.
Which is, there was a moment where my relationship was on and off. Okay. So I would hang out with my ex still, and I wouldn't introduce her to people. Let's say I'm out. I'm like, hey, what's up, Brandon? Like, I would just talk and like, oh, good seeing you. And I would just walk off.
And she's like literally next to you.
Yeah. I remember she told me specifically, like, oh, how come you didn't introduce me? And like, I felt like I wasn't even there. And I said, because we're in this weird taboo spot where we're not together, but we're exes. Right. But we're talking. So I didn't know how to introduce you. Like, am I gonna be like, oh, here's my ex,
Here's
like,
my on and off girlfriend.
Yeah, exactly. But then, I'm like, okay, well, I need to say something. So even with my last ex, like we dated for, I think 4 or 5 months before we became official. Okay. I know that's kind of weird to people now, because everyone was like, what do you mean you became official after dating that long? Like, you guys are already boyfriend, girlfriend. And to me, the way I do it is like, I need consent, right? I need confirmation. Right. Like, until I ask you, you're not my girlfriend.
Oh, okay.
Even though we've been dating for a while, but it's like, yeah, we might see things differently. And I just want to confirm.
Right.
Yeah, so while I was dating her for the first 4 or 5 months, I would say, because I can't really place a title on it, I would say, oh, this is my girl.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just to be wary of it. I'm like, okay, like I acknowledge that you're here and you're someone to me, but I don't want to call you my girlfriend. Because, I'm sure that happens too, where someone calls the other person oh, this is my boyfriend, my girlfriend, and they've never talked to them, and they're shocked. They're like, oh,
Like, what are you talking about?
We're at that level now?
Right.
Yeah.
Because I do think, like, still people are very much split on, like, do you need to officially ask, like, the other person to be in a relationship?
Yeah.
In order to be, like, a girlfriend or boyfriend. And
what
like,
do you think?
I believe in the official ask. Like, I need to be... Because up until that point, like... I don't know. I don't want to assume. Because there are so many times where, like, it's like, oh, like... Right? Situationship vibes where... Sometimes, like, I don't even know what they want. And so, I think there always has to be a conversation of, like... What are you looking for? And when I say, like, what are you looking for... Not necessarily with me. It's literally in general. Like, I want to know those big picture things of, like, do you want to be in a serious relationship with somebody, the right person? Or are you, like, in a stage of your life where, like, you know, it's just casual? Like, I think an intentions question or intentions conversation first and foremost. And then after having that and, like, continuing getting to know each other, then comes the... okay, what are we doing? Like, what are we specifically doing?
Yeah.
Like, would you like to be in a relationship, or, like, do you still need more time? And so, yeah, I think, you need to officially ask me to be your girlfriend.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so too. I've seen so many relationships get really messy because people are either, because a lot of the guys I notice, it's always the guys asking. Typically, right? Because I've heard it a lot from my friends who are girls or women. They would say, like, oh, I'm not gonna ask him, he's gonna ask me,
right?
You know? And then it doesn't happen, and then they're in this weird state of flux where, like, why didn't they like me enough to do it? You know, like, because it becomes like a stalemate at a certain point.
Right.
Certain guys, they're definitely very capable of just asking you right away after the second or, you know, third date. Super easy.
Right.
But it's very rare. Like, do you have a rule of thumb after a certain, how many dates are you like, okay,
so
something needs to happen?
I don't have, like, I need to be asked by this date, or, like, I need to know what's going on by date 4. I don't have that, just because, like, I think people open up at different speeds and, like, levels. But I do find that, like, in the past, I used to run extremely anxious in terms of, like, dating. Like, it was always like, oh, does he like me? Like, is he even looking for anything, like, serious? Because I tend to be more on the serious side. I don't really, like, do casual dating, at least in this stage in my life. And so I want to be able to see a future with them. And so I think, like, with all that anxiety, like, I would always be, like, after every single date, like, I need to decide if I like him or not. I need to decide. Like, I was always like, what is he looking for? What am I looking for? Like, it was just, like, it was too much. Honestly, like, way
Sounds
too
like
much.
a lot.
Yeah. And so, like, after all of that, like, energy expenditure, I think, like, I've just, like, calmed down. I'm like, let's just look at the date for what it is. And, like, did I enjoy my, like, spending time with this person? Would I like to see them again? Because I think, like, another thing maybe you relate to, maybe you don't, is, like, a lot of times I can't distinguish between, like, if I like a person, this is gonna sound bad, or if I, like the attention. Oh. Because I think, right, like, as humans, it's a very natural thing to, like, want attention from, like, a potential romantic partner, let's say. And so that's where, like, a lot of my questions come in, because I'm like, okay, do I actually like them? Maybe are they, like, just really good on paper, but we don't, like, vibe in person? And so, like, I'm still a little in my head, and I'm still, like, working through, like, all those feelings. And so, yeah, I mean, like, what do you think?
Wow, that's actually very well thought out. As far as my own approach, I just think about, like, are they good for me or not at the time being?
Okay.
And that means in ways where it's like, am I happy with this person? Do I enjoy them being around? Is there a sense of, like, attraction?
Okay.
And then that'll let me know. But it's usually pretty early on because, you know, right away they're already my friends. So
Right.
I already have that. Like, we get along, you know?
Uh-huh.
And then it's more like, is there an attraction? That's usually the second question, because, you know, it's weird because, yeah, a lot of my friends who are females, they're just in the friend zone. You know, I'm just
Right.
like, we're strictly just friends.
Right.
So I got to see them in a different light somehow.
Okay.
And that only happens as, like, I'm willing to pay attention. It's really easy for me to turn my blinders on and not focus on that aspect of them at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so it takes a little bit, but after that, where I'm like, am I attracted to this person? Like, I know they're attractive, but am I attracted, right?
Right.
And then I'll be like, oh, yeah, actually, this is kind of dumb, but like, just kind of go back to like a past relationship. Like, one of my exes, once we became friends, I didn't look at her in that way at all. And then when we got into a relationship, I was like, wow, she has a big butt. Like, how did I not notice that? You know, and that's just how I am. Where like I'm not, because I don't want to be those guys where I'm like, you know, like, oh crap, like I'm checking them out because I'm like, oh, you're my friend, so I'm not gonna do that.
That's weird. Yeah,
exactly, that's weird. And only until like I start questioning that, like, oh, am I attracted? I'm like, oh wow, she has all these features that I never really paid attention to.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah,
that's interesting because like I think for me, once one of my guy friends is in the friend zone, like he's pretty hard in the friend zone.
Really?
Yeah.
Has anyone ever gone out?
No, I actually like there's never been a friends to lovers trope in my life. Yeah.
Damn.
I do think like in a lot of ways, like I feel like maybe I might find my partner that way, but like a lot of my friends I swear are like brothers to me. Because I think a lot of times like there are just like certain I don't even know how to describe it. Like there's one thing about when I like start talking heavily about relationships with like a guy, it's almost like I'm friend zoning them. Or like if a guy starts talking to me about his like, you know, girls that he's talking to, I feel friend zoned. And so like I think with a lot of my guy friends, like I'll just kind of like be like, I don't understand what's going on with this dude. Like, can you play translator? Because like I don't think this way. And so it's almost like barriers have been like created.
Oh, that makes sense though.
Yeah.
I do know certain people who will talk about their past relationships with the person they're currently interested in them. That does happen too, and I've noticed that they do it because in a way they want them to learn more about their past experiences,
right?
And you know, kind of tell them like, oh, this is what I look for in a person, or this is what I feel annoyed by, or this is how I feel comforted.
So in that way I think that's good because it's like it's focusing on like what you learned or like what like can it be applied to future relationships. But I've definitely had like experiences where I'm like, I just know too much.
Really?
Like, yeah, with like one of my exes, like it was literally like I know way too much, almost to the point where like I feel like it was like building an unhealthy relationship within me of like, oh, I literally know her name now. Like I don't need to know her full name.
Yeah.
Like why did you share that?
Yeah, that does happen though. I'm not sure. Well, do you have an idea of why he shared it?
I think he just didn't know, which is like, so it's excused. Like, I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes it's like, you can't go back on the information that you shared.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
It's funny because the reason why I'm bringing that up is because in all my relationships, they love to dig and they love to pry. And I'm the kind of guy where I'm like, I don't really want to talk about this with you because it feels uncomfortable. And I feel like, especially if you know the person or you come across them somehow, or you stalk them on social media, it's just going to open up a can of worms, you know?
Oh, yeah. Even, like, to that, like, even the guys that I'm, like, matching with or, like, going on dates with, I don't stalk them. Because, like, there have been too many experiences where, like, I will just kind of, like, build them up to be this person via their Instagram, which is like, that's insane. I know that's what everyone does, but like I want to like get to know them for them. And then even like vice versa, I've had like people who have like found me on social media. That's fine, that's normal, but then have gone like a level deeper to like maybe like listen to the podcast or like do a little bit too much digging where I feel like they already have preconceived notions of who I am because I've said that on the podcast, where maybe I've changed, maybe I've grown.
Yeah.
But no matter what, like, I want you to get to know that from me and through our experiences.
Wow, that's going to be kind of tough, right? Assuming that your future plans for your podcast is to grow.
Oh, yeah.
Because then your audience grows, the likelihood of that happening is going to grow. Like, I cannot speak on that because I started this podcast after I got single.
Oh.
Right? So I am not dated since.
Okay.
So for me, I would not know how that would affect my dating life at all.
Right.
But it sounds like it's kind of affected yours already.
Here and there. Here and there.
Here and there. Any good examples where you're like, how do you know that? I've always said that on the podcast.
Maybe no specific examples of that, but even like sometimes depending on the day even, I'll like meet with a person and they're like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I have a podcast. But like, you know, just like for my sake, like I usually don't share like the name. And I kind of like give them that spiel of like, I want you to get to know me in real life.
Yeah.
And like I've had people like literally respond to like my podcast Instagram like stories and being like, hey, or whatever. And I'm like, I literally like I set that boundary and like you didn't respect it.
Yeah.
Like I know you get curious, but like you don't need to tell me. Like, you can find it on your own. You don't need to tell me about it though.
So hey, I saw you on the podcast.
No, yeah. But other than that, it's just like, yeah, I just like share so much and I'm like an ever changing, like growing human being. And so even like I don't even know what I'm saying sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
Like if you listen back like 6 months ago, like I probably had different dating philosophies and all of that. Even like what I'm like looking for and whatnot. And so, well, yeah, I think it's just like in a way, like if you're taking it as lightheartedly as like I would want you to, cool, sure, but I don't. In my experiences, like it hasn't been like that.
So my co-host Mario, I've never really been on dating apps, meaning I was on one day and then I deleted the app after that.
Okay, so no dates from the dating app?
No dates at all. And but my buddy Mario, he's a frequent dater. Like he loves to go on dates and stuff like that. And he promotes the podcast on the dating apps. Like it says like podcast host. So, you know, when he'll match with people, certain people will be like, are you just trying to promote your podcast?
Wait, yeah.
Which sometimes he just is just promoting it. But we were talking about how funny it would be if someone who watches the podcast like becomes the person that he paints out to be perfect due to what he says on the podcast.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if like someone was like a super fan and they just like they were like, oh, I'm into this, oh, I'm into this, oh, I'm like this.
It's just it checks off all your boxes and you're like, whoa, this is weird.
I feel like that's psychopath behavior. That's like gone girl behavior.
Yeah, but then you don't know they're following you though. So like,
oh right,
this perfect guy just pops up out of nowhere. He checks off all the boxes.
Right.
And we have so many things in common.
Right.
He throws away the trash from the back seats. He doesn't take the booth seat.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's insane. I would be so scared.
Yeah.
But like also like maybe they are my perfect person if they're that obsessed with me. No, I'm kidding. I think like one of the biggest like social media trends like maybe last year amongst like the girlies was like, I want him to be obsessed with me.
I have heard that a couple times.
I personally very much dislike it. Like I don't function like that because like there have been instances, right, where like I'm like, oh, okay, like obviously I like it when people like me back, you know, but if I feel like you're putting me on a pedestal of sorts and it almost feels like you aren't seeing me even in all my flaws and all of that, then like it's almost like, who are you in a relationship with? Like you're in a relationship with someone you've like built me out to be versus like actually me. And so I very much do not subscribe to like you have to be obsessed with me, though I'll say it as a joke.
I gotta ask you, why do you think that became a thing?
Oh, because like my ex was like, I felt like I was on a pedestal. Or, oh, you mean the social media trend?
Both.
Okay, well, I think like with the social media trend, I think it's like, in a way, a lot of people are jaded with dating because they just feel like there are so many options out there. Like if I'm dating someone and I like find one thing off, I can move on to the next so easily. Like it's literally building your perfect person, right? In ways of just like
build a date.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, it's a numbers game, all of that of just like, I'm going to go on as many dates as possible until I find that person. So I think girls are kind of sick of like feeling like just an option. And so if there's a guy that is like, quote, obsessed with them, then like, right, their entire worldview is just the girl. Yeah. And then for me specifically, like this kind of like developed because I think like one of my exes, like I think he like liked me too much maybe to the point where like he wasn't like seeing me for me. Yeah. Cause like though I'm very terrified of like being judged for my flaws.
You don't like being built up, but you don't like being torn down either.
Yeah, like there has to be a right. Like I feel like there has to be a balance.
A balance, yeah.
Of like you see me as a whole person, and like you're meeting me where I'm at, but like meeting me where I'm at is like also it encompasses like seeing my flaws.
Yeah, that's a hard balance to me sometimes. I feel like I'm so, I wouldn't say like nitpicky, but when things bother me, it's hard for me not to bring it up.
Ooh. What are like some of the things that like have bothered you?
Ooh, okay, so
it's like this and this and this.
So this one I was able to overlook for a little bit. And again, this is just my opinion. If it doesn't bother other people, that's fine.
Right.
But I've like dated people who have said, yeah, I think ignorance is bliss. And I'm like, And I'm the opposite. Where I want to find out everything, the good and the bad, like let me know. Because I don't think this world is rainbows and butterflies. I do think there's bad things that happen, you know, and I don't want to be ignorant to it. I do want to know what's going on with the world. So that to me was like, oh, you rather just stay in your own bubble. And that's something that's really hard for me to ignore because I'll point out why things aren't as good as you think. And
it's like not one of those things where you can like accept like we're different in this way.
It's really hard. I mean, I try to, you know, but that statement is something that bleeds out to a lot of other things. It's very broad already.
It's like literally a life philosophy. Yeah,
exactly. So I would see certain things like this person would be like, oh, I got a job. I hate the fact that I have to work 15 hours a week, like 3 days a week, 5 hours a day. And I'm like, you know, like the standards is like 40 hours and people work more than that. Like your life is not that bad. You know, I would just tell them like, it's not that bad. Like just enjoy it. And they're like, no, I'm miserable. Like I hate this. I'm like, wow, that's crazy because in your world, that's terrible.
Right.
You know, and I can't change that. And there was just things like that would bleed out into different topics where I'm like, I don't know what to tell you at this point. And it's making things harder because I'm the person where I'm willing to work. I'm willing to go out there and put more time in the things that I love doing, even the things that I don't love doing because I have to do it. Yeah,
I do think like one of my big things is like complaining in general of just like, I can understand that. I actually very much completely understand like problems are relative, right? Like something that like might not be a big deal to me is probably maybe a huge deal to you. But at the same time, like at least being cognizant of like how the complaining is like affecting the general mood and also like even like your view on it of just like not everything has to be productive, but like is this being productive? Like
at least not counterproductive.
Yeah, for sure. And then right, I know you said like you were in like a 10-year relationship, a 4-year relationship. Like, how do you feel like coming out of those things? Because I haven't dated that long term.
What was the longest?
About a year.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm like curious, like how you like recover from that?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually.
Yeah.
So my shortest was like a year and a half, and then 4 years, and then 10 years. Well, 10 years was in the middle. 4 years was the most recent.
Uh-huh.
And I'm a kind of person, especially now, where I'm very okay with being by myself.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, me being by myself just means that I'm not dating. Like, I have friends, you know, I have a big friend group.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. I'm not a loner,
he's okay,
you know?
he's okay.
Yeah. Me and Mario are still friends. But yeah, I think for me, getting out of those relationships, I always need a break. Yeah. So except for my 1 year to my 10-year relationship, that wasn't too much of a break. I think that was probably only a couple months before I got into the 10-year relationship.
Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
But my 10-year relationship was basically from when I was 18 to almost 28.
That's a lot of life.
Yeah, it was a lot. And it's like during those years, you know, of your life where you're going to college, you're doing a lot of things, a lot of like experimenting, learning about yourself, and just exploring, right?
Yeah.
And when I got out of it, so that would be my first long relationship, I guess.
Yeah.
Because that's 10 years and that's double digits, you know?
Double digits,
Double digits. But getting out of it, I felt like I needed time alone because I didn't know who I was anymore.
Oh.
I had lost myself a little bit. And that's not due to it being 10 years, but just the specifics of that relationship.
Okay.
So towards the, I want to say like the 7th year to the 10th year, I tried very hard to make her happy in ways where I would change myself.
Oh.
Yeah. And I felt like I lost who I was.
Yeah.
A little bit during that time, so I needed time to like recover. And I actually got a very good piece of advice from a friend of mine who really helped me get out of that hole. So I had met a friend in college, and he was probably, to me, one of the coolest guys. I was like, wow, this guy is super cool. He was in my entrepreneurs club. He had already owned multiple businesses, like multi-millionaire, and just like overall very intelligent guy, and he had like a very interesting past. He used to be a pickup artist. He ran like 2 or 3 companies, and just straight A student. Came back for his master's. I was like, why are you here when you're like so well off? He's like, I just love to learn. And that was like a cool answer, you know. Right. I was like, whoa. So I asked him one day, I was like, yo, Randy, like, have you ever had your heart broken? And he was like, yeah. I asked him, like, how did you get out of it? Because I feel lost. Like, I feel like I don't know what to do right now because I just got my 10-year relationship. And he said, well, you know, I was very fortunate to have always been myself. And whatever relationship I had was like a cherry on top. So my foundation was this person of me who loved business, who loved beer, who loved like studying and learning. And the cherry on top was my relationship. So by the time that my heart was broken, it was just a cherry on top that was removed, and I still had my foundation as a person. And that allowed me to understand that I have something of worth, that I have value. So I didn't spend too much time on dwelling on it because I'm like, oh, I'm just going to continue to do me, who I am as a person.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, wow, that was very powerful. So I looked inwards and I was like, who is Peter? You know?
Yeah.
What am I about?
Yeah.
And what am I not about? What are all these things that I added on top that wasn't really me just to please my significant other? So, you know, I really looked at myself and I was like, oh, okay, I'm this person. I like doing this. I enjoyed this. This matters a lot to me. This is very fulfilling. And I worked on those things and it helped me get out of it. And even though I still took quite a break, I think I was single for 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
I talked to a couple people, but again, it was one of those things where it's like, oh, we're friends and now we're kind of talking. But it never became anything. Like, yeah, other side from like, you know, casual dating, I guess.
Right.
And then with my most recent relationship, it was very similar. But I already knew what to do.
Oh, right. It's like I've been through this before.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, it gets easier.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think it gets easier in a lot of different ways. The 10-year relationship allowed me to understand when I was overextending. Because in that 10-year relationship, I think this has a lot to do with my psychology as a person. My parents are split up. So when I got into that 10-year relationship, I was like, I do not want my relationship to fail as my parents did.
Oh.
So I pushed for us to be together way longer than it needed to be.
I see.
Because I didn't want to feel that feeling of failure.
Right,
Yeah, because
right.
once you reach a certain point in your relationship, you're like, oh, we've been together for 5 years already. Like, why throw this away? Oh, we've been together for 6. Why throw this away? And it keeps on going till where you have to draw the line and realize, does this relationship serve you anymore?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, is it just sunk costs? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like,
And
I don't need to invest more time just because I've invested this amount of time.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why the 4-year relationship was shorter. I think younger me would probably kept it going for a lot longer.
I don't know. Like, I feel like that's like maybe potentially hard to like, right, have that entire mindset of like, is it time to like let this go? And am I just holding on to the amount of years that like we've spent together? But yeah, thanks for sharing. Cause like I've literally, I haven't been close to that.
Have you ever felt like you need to recover from a relationship?
Oh, for sure. Even guys that like I wasn't like officially dating, like, right, we were just like going on dates, seeing each other.
Yeah.
Like I had to recover. And even with that, like in terms of like pacing and feeling like, oh, I need to recover like more quickly, like I don't know like why I'm so like bothered by this, because we weren't even dating. Like I literally can't even call it a breakup. Like I still like try to give myself like grace. And so like with the most like recent guy I was saying, like I was like honestly like very upset. And like it's funny because like I can see how I went through the stages of grief. So like first denial, I was like, this is good for me. Like it wasn't meant to be anyways. Like I literally went to the gym like feeling myself.
Really?
Like I did my hot girl walk. Like I was lifting super heavy. Like I really like I was like, wow, I'm fine. Like I'm better off. And then like in the days like following, I was just like, oh, I just kind of like want to like eat chocolate and cry. And so it's like funny that like I didn't think I was going to be that affected right after it happened, because I was in my super ultra confident phase. But I'm like still realizing that like I have like feelings, and like I'm very empathetic and I feel very deeply. And like that's something I like very much love about myself. And so even like through these like hard times, like I just have to like continue to give myself grace and like let myself feel the feelings, because like I've definitely had my fair share of like times where like I've just like suppressed my emotions, like been super avoidant. Like I'm really good at being avoidant.
Oh really?
Yeah, I'm actually fantastic at being avoidant. And then eventually it'll kind of like blow up in my face, because like I had been avoidant for so long that it's like an emotional like whatever. And so yeah, just like I think overall just like giving myself grace. It's just like, you're allowed to cry. Like yeah, even this morning my grandma was like, oh, in like Korean she was like, oh, you have big tears, aka like you just cry a lot.
Oh
I'm like,
really?
yeah, I do.
Oh really?
Yeah. And like I think that's like something I like, right, growing up it was like in Korean it's like urojima, like don't cry. But I've just started to like realize, I'm like, even when I do cry, it's not that big of a deal. Like honestly a lot of the times like my tears are because I like feel overwhelmed by the emotions rather than like the emotions of like sadness themselves.
Yeah. I want to ask, what were your steps to recover? Because I know you said you did your hot girl stuff.
Oh,
like
yeah.
the gym, obviously. I think that helps everyone. I don't think there's a single person that the gym doesn't help.
Right.
But aside from the gym,
I am 100% like a proponent of no contact. Absolutely. Like after this whole thing ended, like I left our Spotify blend, like I deleted our text message thread, like I deleted all the photos. But then like a part of me knows that I'm not like completely like ready to let go, because like I didn't unfollow him on Instagram.
that's the last straw right there. That's when you're over it.
That's literally the big one.
Yeah.
And like we weren't sharing locations, but that would have gone too. But yeah, I didn't unfollow him on Instagram. I also didn't remove him as a follower. But just for my own sanity, I like muted his stories. Because I'm literally like a baby. Like I have like object permanence issues. Like if you're not in front of me, I literally forget about you.
Yeah.
And so if I don't see his stories, posts, or notes on Instagram, like I'm right out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
And so I'm like slowly building that. But then, oh my gosh, okay. Literally, I'm pissed off because like not even a week after it happened, he had kind of stopped like viewing my stories, which like it's bad that I was even checking. But he liked one of my stories and I was like, what is your issue?
Damn.
Like what do you think the message is that he's sending through his like little heart?
I don't know. I feel like it could either be petty for one, just be like, oh yeah, just let you know I'm still around. Or two, it could be because he doesn't want you to forget him, and maybe he noticed that you weren't viewing his stories and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Why? Wait,
no. I just honestly, I have a feeling it's like that he just wants to be like, oh, like I still like care for you as a human being. It's just like we weren't each other's people. But in my eyes, I'm like, I'm just like a little salty, and it feels a little selfish that you would like keep reminding me that you're around. Because I think like, right, like previous relationship, there were definitely times where like, right, moment of weakness where I'm like, oh, I want to reach out. But I was so good about not doing it because it was like, for context, I had broken up with him, right? And so I made sure not to reach out because like I was like, I don't want to disrupt his healing journey, right? Every single time an ex reaches out, you take a couple steps back, it's like, oh my God, I got sucked in again. And so I thought that was like the most caring thing that I could do is like cut things off, almost like no hope. Like I think hope is like, right, it's a good feeling, but like in the context of like
healing,
healing,
it's a little detrimental.
Yeah, it just feels a little selfish that he liked my Instagram story.
But that's the thing about nowadays is like social media and things. There's so much room for like misunderstanding. Like you never really know.
Right.
I mean, you can narrow it down, but it's very difficult. Yeah. Like for me, very similarly, I try to let go of everything. I try to. I had that moment where I had to do something very similar. With my 10-year relationship, I was feeling like I was not quite letting go. Yeah. And I remembered the day where I felt like I was letting go. And I just listened to this other podcast. It was called The Minimalists.
Oh, okay.
And they're extreme though, all right? They're very extreme. I don't need to be like that. But yeah. He talked about how he like cleaned out his grandma's apartment after she passed away. And then like to let go of her and like this idea of her, he like, I think he threw away the pictures or something. I was like, that's pretty crazy.
That's extreme.
Yeah. But then I had the same thought. I remember thinking like, oh, I'm thinking of this person so much, but how can I not? Someone who's been a part of my life for like a good part of 10 years. I was like, but this is not healthy for me.
Right.
And I think at the time too, she was still talking to me a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what to think. So one day I decided, 10 years, you build a lot of memories together. I had a box full of like photos and letters and notes.
Aww.
And I remember thinking like, I need to get rid of this.
Right.
Yeah. So I like took every picture and like I looked at it and like I tore it up. Took every note, I tore it up, and I threw away the box. So I thought, actually, funny enough. So
dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, that was when I felt like I remember feeling a lot of relief. Like, okay, I'm like ready to let go.
I like love to hoard photos and videos.
Yeah.
And so even my middle school relationship, like I literally still have like the necklace that he gave me.
Oh,
like I just like to keep like usually like one, but I guess like a part of me still thinks like, am I like just like that attached that I like want to keep it, or is it like genuinely for like memory's sake?
Because you know that if it's outside, it's out of mind. Like if you throw it away, you never get to think of it ever again.
Yeah, exactly. But like, right, I also have like a memory box of like it's random, like all the concerts I've been to and all of that, but included in there are like the past
Yeah,
the past guys. Yeah, no, literally I like found like a film strip recently and I was like, oh my god, like I was like, I forgot we took that. But now I think it's like enough time has passed where I literally look back and I like laugh. I'm like, I can't believe past Hannah.
Yeah. I tried to think of it in a way also. I've never really had that much of an issue with it, but I'm just, I guess, being preemptive. Like, I don't want to have a future significant other find it and be like, what the hell is this?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like
so
you're going to get in trouble.
yeah. For me, I'd rather not explain myself, you know? Like, oh, if it doesn't mean that much to me, and it's just for laughs, like, and it means that much to that person, I'm just going to let go of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Yeah.
A little bit going this way, but like, do you think that like girls have potentially been like hesitant to date you because of how long-term your past relationships were?
I don't feel, well, that's the thing too. The girls, well, maybe because then the only girls I could talk about would be my friends, right? Because they would know my past. They would know that I was in a 10-year, 4-year, whatever relationship. And everyone else who I talk to, they don't know that.
Are you sharing or are you not sharing? About
I don't mind, but I've never had enough of a I'm also very avoidant, I guess. Like I've had, again, you know, I don't really approach women, but I have been approached, and it's not something I talk about because we never go on dates, right? Like I've been on the one date that I was on, like it wasn't even, I had no intentions of really, I think I talked about with her because I had no intentions of dating her after that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She was like, oh, tell me about yourself. And I would, because I was like, okay, well, this is just, we could be friends.
Right.
Like, yeah, that's fine for a friend to know. Yeah, so I'll talk about it. But I might be able to see why that would make someone hesitant because, you know, even my past exes have talked about my past exes.
Oh.
And like, oh, what did you enjoy with this person? Like, why did you care about them? Or why were you with them? Or how am I better?
Oh, interesting.
And that's toxic to me because I'm like, I don't want to compare. Like, you guys are different, you know? Like,
right.
This person I cared for a lot at one point in my life.
Right.
And you're the person that I'm dating now. And that's what matters.
Right.
But at the same time, you know, they're all very curious and they have to know.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm very reluctant to share, but I always end up sharing, which is, please don't ever share. Like if people are asking, it's always gonna be bad. If they say they're gonna be okay with it, they're not gonna be okay with it. They're not gonna be okay with it.
Like I know myself well enough now. It's like I know I'm not okay with it, so I literally won't even ask.
Yeah, that's great. That's great because I can't tell how many times I'm like, I've been through this before. I know you're not gonna be okay with it, but then you get guilty conscience and you're like. And they tell you, oh, I'm different though. Like I won't feel like that. And then you give in, and you're like, I'm so fucking stupid. Like,
no, and then they're like, oh my god, I was gonna be okay with it until you said double digits.
Yeah, exactly. When the truth comes out.
Oh my gosh, yeah, no, I've learned my lessons in dating of like I will also never really ask people like what their type is because I've had one person basically explain their type and like I didn't fit into that bucket and I was like I just hurt my own feelings.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do this ever again. So I no longer ask people what their type is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually one of my biggest pet peeves.
Oh yeah.
Is hearing people's types. Weirdly enough, because what I've noticed is that a lot of my friends who have these types and they're so firm on it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you like 6'2" guys. Oh, you like really dark guys. Oh, you like white guys. Whatever's, right? And I see them with someone that's not that. And I'm like, that guy's not 6 foot something. He's like 5'8". You know, like he's not white. He's like this Asian kid. You know?
Right.
The way I see it, and I'm very similar in that way. It's like I don't know exactly what my type is. I just think that I'm attracted to who I'm attracted to, and it's kind of broad, but like if you fit a couple of or you check off some boxes, it usually works out.
Right.
But when you say your specific type and I only date this and not that, you pigeonhole yourself into this box that no one's really asking for most of the time. And then you look silly when you're not dating that type. You're just like, oh, what happened here? Like I have friends or guys like, oh, like thick girls. And I'm like, that girl's a twig. She's not thick by any standard, you know?
Right. And so why did you compromise?
Yeah. Or why did you? Yeah. To me, I'm like, oh, you're just not dating someone you like. But then you realize, like, hey, you know, you don't have to tell me that. It's fine. Like, if you just like who you like, then you're gonna allow yourself to just feel it, right?
Right.
And you don't need to question it as much.
Yeah. No, for sure. I also like think, like, I could totally be like, oh, someone's from this city, I'm not gonna date them.
Oh, really?
Literally West Side. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know why you moved out there. Like, maybe you like the beach, but maybe you're not like my general stereotype of like West Side, you know? And so, yeah, I like really, really try not to pigeonhole myself.
Yeah.
Nor other people.
Yeah, because it's a big world out there. There's a lot of people. I think two things that are very similar in that case is obviously explaining your type. And the second one would be, especially if you're younger too, is saying what you want to do with your life as far as a career. Because I feel like a lot of kids don't know what the fuck they want to do, you know? So to ask them, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I feel like it's detrimental because you're kind of pigeonholing this kid into his box.
Right.
He doesn't know what he wants to do.
Right.
Very similar, like, kids, when they start liking people when they're young, they usually try to figure out their type. And then when people ask them, it's like, okay, let me give them an answer. I don't want to feel like I don't know what I like.
Right.
But that's actually okay.
You're right. Because I think I've always felt like a little like, oh, I should like figure out what I like. But even when my friends like kind of like look at the past people that I've dated, they're like, there's no through line. I'm like, oh yeah. But like generally it's just like, I want you to be like a nice person and like be like thoughtful and like it's more so like those inner qualities that I like look for when I'm like describing my type, and they're like, no, but like what do you want to look at? I'm like, oh, I don't know. I have no idea. So yeah, I think even like, yeah, you're right with career. Like there have been so many times where it's like when I'm making a career decision, it feels like this is gonna be my career forever. So it almost like hinders me from making a decision because I'm like, oh my god, I'm stuck in this forever. But now I'm realizing, I'm like, people have multiple careers, I can have multiple passions, and like it's okay to like split up your time and like a lot of things. And so yeah, even like career wise, like I'm like, I'm not sure exactly where I'm going, but I know like what I like and what I don't like for the most part, so we'll like continue down this trajectory. And so yeah, it's been interesting navigating all of that.
I gotta ask you, you seem very well composed in the way you handle dating and even just like your podcast and the way you're talking now. I'm kind of curious, do you feel any kind of imposter syndrome now that you're putting yourself up on the internet? You're a person talking about it. I know that you mentioned earlier that who I am, like, you know, who I was like 6 months ago might not be who I am today. Do you ever feel like, oh crap, I need to present myself in a specific way so therefore I'm not wrong or I'm not, you know, too concrete in the way I say things?
So I think that like a lot of like the growth over the past few years has been like letting go of like what other people perceive me to be. And so even when it comes to like podcasting and career, like I really try to like block out what other people say to me. And so they'll like say nice things to me, like I will take that in. And I say that because like one of the guests I had on recently, I had him on previously. So I had him on about a year ago, and then he came on again recently. And he was like, oh, wow, like you have like really improved. Like I can tell like your brain is working in certain ways. Like you call back to certain things I even forgot we were talking about. Like you've gotten really good at this. And so I think like slowly but surely I'm finding confidence in my effort more than like the outcome. And like, right, seems like you listen to a lot of podcasts. Like one of my favorite podcasts is the Huberman Lab. Like I'm just like, I'm a Huberman wife. Like I'm obsessed with that man. But
I know so many girls who are. It's so funny.
Oh my gosh! Like, did they see the shirtless video of him? Probably.
The one that he's like working out.
Yeah, where he's carrying
I was like, what the fuck? Andrew Huberman is jacked.
He's jacked and he's tatted.
Jacked, yeah, I was shocked. I was like, I knew the tad part because he was on another podcast where he talked about like why he wears long sleeve shirts.
Oh.
He's like, I just don't want to be distracting. I was like, oh, but then I've also.
Because he is distracting.
That's fair. That dude is Jack though.
Yeah, and so one of my favorite episodes from him is like essentially how like when you're like raising kids, for example, if you like continually tell a kid like you're smart, I think that's when they are like they tend to be a little bit more self-conscious. They even said like those kids tend to lie more and they don't get as far in their life because they're like purely relying on like, oh, I am smart, versus the kids that you reward for their effort of like, oh, you worked really hard at this, like, oh, you did your best, they'll continually try hard things. And so I was raised as like, you're smart, and so I'm almost trying to like switch my entire mindset into I can like rely purely on my effort and like be confident in my effort, because I know that if I work hard at something, like we'll eventually get somewhere.
Yeah.
Rather than like, oh, I like outsmarted the algorithm or whatever.
Yeah, I'm actually very similar in that way. I always tell people I'm like not naturally talented at anything. Everything requires a lot of hard work for me to even be decent. And I have a brother who's like the opposite, just super smart, very talented at a lot of things. And the way we grew up was very different. You know, I had to try a lot. I was always in the awkward phase of everything that I did because it takes me a lot of effort to get decent. And he was always praised for things without him having to really try.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the difference is like, you know, now it's, if he sees a little bit of resistance, it's very hard for him to overcome it. Yeah. And I see resistance, I'm like, oh, that's just another hurdle. I'm like used to it.
Yeah, I'm like really trying to get there because I fell underneath like what your brother was going through of like, especially in recent years of like, oh, I don't want to try the thing unless like everything is perfect.
Yeah.
Like everything has to be set up. I have to feel completely adequate. But now I'm realizing like just do the thing, and like you don't have to do it well, but at least you have like that momentum and you can always like improve from there.
Yeah.
And so even with like podcast episodes, like at the beginning, oh my goodness, like I was being so nitpicky. I was like, I can't believe I say this and that, and like, right, all the awkward pauses. But now it's just like, oh, let me just put it out there and we'll get better eventually. And like the podcast has been like literally concrete evidence of that. And so like in that way, like even going into 2024, like I never used to set goals or anything, but I'm finally being like, oh, I can set goals and I can fail at them and that's okay.
Oh, it's a great mindset.
Yeah.
I'm like the opposite, where I'm like, I'm just gonna trust the process and hopefully it gets me somewhere.
Oh yeah, no, that was me. Like I don't really like plan.
Yeah.
But I almost think the lack of planning is because like I'm scared of failure, like my fear of failure. So we're tackling that head on this year.
All right, I'm rooting for you.
Thank you. You too.
Hopefully I get there too, because I kind of feel exactly what you were saying. That kind of resonates, like the fear of failure. And I kind of see that in myself.
I mean, even when you talked about like your relationship, right? Like how you like didn't want it to quote fail.
Yeah.
And so like that's why like you kind of like continued trying. Yeah, I think fear of failure just comes out in every single way.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
Relationships, in, you know, entrepreneurial endeavors, in just personal life. Yeah. I have also, you know, noticed that I'm very bad at letting go of friends because that same reason.
Oh, really? Okay.
But also it has paid off in some ways too. You know, I have been friends with people who, you know, the situations I've gone through, a lot of people will not be friends with those people again. And they've understood the chance I'm willing to take on them, and now our friendship is like great.
I think like finding that balance between like
it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard, especially in a day and age now where it's like you can just meet a bunch of people and you can just like move on.
Yeah, I'm like I have plenty of friends.
Exactly.
And so like what makes me want to like stick around with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like I don't know, even with friendships, like I go out a lot, like I meet a lot of people, but I'm trying to be more selective with like who I spend time with. And like that doesn't mean I'm closed off to friends, but it definitely means like I want to be like very intentional with like those people I'm like spending my time with. Like I don't have time.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I started this podcast, it actually is a reboot. We started in 2018. And it was a reboot because during 2020, during COVID, I found myself going through a lot of like depressive episodes. And this is the first time I've ever been like that. I'm usually not that guy. I'm the happy-go-lucky guy. Everyone's like, "Oh, hey, how you been?" You know, like. Yeah. But so at that time, I started doing more research. Funny enough, I started watching Andrew Huberman and a couple different other podcasts on like depression. And then, you know, the more I found out, the more I would take note of things that I need to do to feel better. Right. I mean, a lot of days was me just laying in bed, not feeling like doing anything, because that's just what comes with the territory. Yeah. But then there are times where, you know, I'd be like, okay, it's good to like journal, or it's good to go out and get some sunlight, or it's good to like meditate, or it's good to write the things that you're grateful for, you know, or the things that you're looking forward to, or what made you feel happy today, and what made you feel bad today. And I would compile these things that I learned, and I would post it online. Like, oh, if you guys are, I would say like, oh, just in case if you guys are feeling some type of way like I have, like try these things and hopefully it helps you guys out. And people start reaching out to me and like saying, oh, I really appreciate you doing that. Like I felt very similar like you, and it actually made me feel better knowing that you go through it too. That I'm not alone. And then eventually it was like 4 or 5 accountability buddies. That's what we called each other, because we would check in every week, like, how you doing? And the thing about going through something like depression is that you're going to feel bad most of the time. Yeah. But there are stints where you feel better. Yeah. And those times you have to be productive towards you feeling better. And the more you do that, the bigger that window becomes. Yeah, so you throw in like working out and stuff like that, meditating, the window becomes bigger and you have more chances to work on yourself. And eventually, like it feels more like you're more normal than you are depressed. Because it still comes in waves, you know, it still happens. And I noticed that the more normal I became due to all of these things that I was taking action on, the less time I had to check up on all these people that were my friends. Oh, yeah. Because now I'm like working out, I'm going out and hanging out with friends, I'm making plans, stuff like that. And eventually I was like, hey, you know what? Like, how can I reach a broader audience? Right. You know? So I was like, oh, yeah, let me start the podcast back up. And we'll talk about things like trauma and depression. And, you know, because the reason why you get there is different. And this is something I heard from a Huberman podcast too. He was saying like people who are like very depressed, something about, they usually go through 5 bouts or 5 things that are going on at the same time that's causing them to feel like the way they do. Whether it's like they're unconfident in themselves, they're unhappy with their family, they're unhappy with their career, whatever it is. But no matter what that reason is, right? Because it's for everyone, it's different. The pain and the depression that you feel, the sadness, comes from the same place in your brain. Interesting. So therefore, you can't really write off a person's reason to be depressed. Because they feel the same way as any other depressed person. Right. Whether or not their reason is justified, that's, again, you know, perspective on the person.
Whoa, interesting. Because me too, like literally 2020, I was going through it. Really? And so like, even if you listen back to like those episodes, like it is insane to me, like not only like how far the podcast has come, but like how far I've come. And like I think like you, like I think the thing that I'm like most grateful for is like allowing other people to like feel a little bit less lonely. Like even if I reach a small number of people, like as long as there's like one, even if it's just for myself, honestly, because yeah, like I'll often like listen back and I'm like, wow, like I'm so proud of like the growth that I've done and like the hard work that I've like put in to like pull myself out. Like at the end of the day, I was like, I had to rely like on myself and my therapist, but it like, yeah, like it was because of like my efforts, you know? So yeah, I completely relate to you in that way.
So I just wanted to ask you, with how you're dating now, was it very different growing up in dating, being in a Korean household?
Ooh, So I actually like did not date at all I had like I had 2 boyfriends in middle school.
Hey, that's a lot more than I thought.
That's a lot. One lasted 3 days. One lasted like 3 months, which is pretty long in middle school.
It is.
And then after that, like even high school, college, like I didn't date at all. And so I actually think like graduating college and then kind of like growing into myself has been like the biggest catalyst in like my dating life. And like my parents like very much encouraged me to date because well they don't want me to end up alone. But then also like they're very understanding of like you need to date in order to like figure out what kind of person like you want to be with. Wow. And my dad especially has been very vocal about like don't think about what me and mom want, like don't think about what we think. Like of course we want him to like well integrate into our family, but at the end of the day like you're the one spending all the time with him, like you have to like him. Yeah. So I think it's been very like helpful that they've been like so positive and encouraging.
That is very positive and encouraging.
Yeah.
So when you first started dating out of college, was it weird?
Oh, I was like scared shitless. Like I was not okay. Like before dates, like I was like having to take deep breaths and all of that, which is fine. But now I really go into dates being like, I'm literally just meeting a new person. Like let's just approach it like how I approach everything else in life. It's just like just be present in the moment and like if there's a vibe, there's a vibe. If there's not, like no attachments. That's
really good. How long has it been since you started dating?
It's been like 5 years. Okay. I had like one relationship within the 5 years.
Yeah.
So like 4 years of dating, 1 year of like relationship. And then literally my like breaks with dating where I'm like, I'm so frustrated with Hinge. Everyone's ugly. I need to delete it. Yeah. And then I'll re-download it.
Oh, really? How long does it take for you to re-download it?
Usually when I like decide to or delete it in the first place, like I'm like pretty set on it. And so it'll be like 2-3 months. So it's not like a every week type of thing. Because I definitely have friends who like, like every single day they're like, I'm frustrated. Like, yeah. Why did I do this to myself again?
That's so interesting because you're the opposite friend of me where people always ask me, when people ask me like, how have I been? They usually want to know how my love life is.
Yeah.
Are you dating anyone? And I'm like, nah. And it goes on for 2 years and they're like, what the hell is going on? Like, you got nothing to update me on. I'm like, no, I really don't.
Yeah, we're just chilling. We're just hanging out.
And like, I'll tell them about other things. Like, oh yeah, I've been traveling a lot, doing this and doing that. And like, okay, that's cool, but you haven't been seeing anyone? I'm like, oh God, why is this always like the point of the conversation?
Yeah. And like, I love talking about dating, but at the same time, like, it's like, I think like shallow in ways. I'm like, you don't want to talk about me?
Yeah.
You don't talk about me? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now that you've been dating, do you ever feel, because I know you talked about it a little bit earlier, and I think I get a feel for it, but do you feel like disheartened where dating's at? I
think I'm a very hopeful person. Like, literally my friends are like, I cannot believe after like how many like quote failed things that like you've maybe been through that you're still so hopeful. And so I think like for me, like I'm very much, I lean more positive than negative. But I also recognize that like there are some people out there who like they're just dating to feed their ego, or they're dating because like they're looking for a rebound. And so I think it's just a matter of like weeding those people out. That's like maybe like I'm tired. Yeah, so maybe less disheartened, more I'm over it.
In that way we're kind of opposites. Where
really?
I think so. Like I'm optimistic that I could possibly find someone, but I'm also like, I'm okay with dying alone,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, like that's fine. Either way is cool, so I'm cool with whatever happens, and I think funny enough that's kind of like the way people view me now. Like no one really tries to set me up on, actually someone tried to set me up on a date
and you just said no?
Yeah, I said no. I was in the place to date, and it was just like a lot of high. It was just, have I ever been set up on a date aside from that? No, I think that was the only time.
Okay.
But a couple people have tried, And that one I was like, I'm sorry, I can't do it. It was just too high pressure.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because.
I think it was just it sounded like the other person was ready for something super serious.
Oh, I see.
And I'm not saying that I'm not ready for it, but that's not what I'm going into a date for.
Yeah.
You know, like for me, I'm very, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to set this expectation where it's like, because to me, I could just go on a date and make a friend. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
You know, if it becomes a relationship, I'm okay with that too.
Right.
But I'm not going into where it's like, oh, you don't check off any of my boxes, so therefore this is shit, and like I'm over it, you know?
Right.
Yeah, that's scary to me.
Yeah. It feels like a lot.
Yeah. I'm like, I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea. That's fine.
Right.
Especially they're like, oh, this person, they're a Hollywood writer for like Emily in Paris, and you should be. I'm like, oh God. I'm already
That was a very specific example.
Yeah, that was. And so this person, if they watch it, they know who I'm talking about. But I'm just like, oh God, like they're around Hollywood and stuff like this. Like I don't really,
I don't really vibe. Yeah, me too. I'm not the Hollywood type.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But what do you have planned for
2024?
Yeah, for 2024.
Dating specifically or in general?
Both.
Both. Okay. I think in general, my main themes have been like doing things scared and really like facing my fear of like failure / rejection like head on, because it really bothers me that like my fear of failure will prevent me from like even trying. Yeah. And so like I've just been telling myself like, let's just do it scared. Like I'm freaking scared, like let's just do it scared. And that includes, I think, like relationship and dating. Like I think oftentimes like I'm scared to like get into something, but I'm like, let's just do it scared. Like you're not gonna be 100% like this is my person, like I found my husband. But like I think like giving things like a chance and a try is like worth it. And then what else? I think other than that, like really just like continuing like showing up as myself and like maybe doing a little bit less people pleasing, because I tend to like want to like kind of go with the flow and like be chill and all that, but slowly I'm learning like how to draw boundaries and that like people won't hate me for saying no to them, which is like irrational, but somewhere in my head like I feel like I like rationalize that. So just overall just like good vibes, all of that.
I'm very similar in that way too. But I'm also the guy who's like always people pleasing, always down to the point where now I'm starting to notice people saying no. So I'm like, if you say no, I would like mark it off like, okay, now I have a chance to say no back to you. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's like if one person parks illegally, then I guess I could maybe park illegally.
Yeah, exactly. I'm allowing myself that.
Yeah. Okay, nice.
Yeah. We're both on the same page.
Yeah.
All right, guys, welcome to the lightning round where we ask our guests rapid fire questions or they have to drink.
Oh my gosh.
And are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. What is your biggest fear?
Failure.
I should have known that from earlier. Okay. What is your biggest red flag?
I'm picky.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm picky.
Okay, that's pretty good. What's one place in the world that you'd like to travel to?
Ooh. Oh my gosh, there's so many. Vietnam.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Vietnam's dope.
Yeah.
Vietnam's dope. What is one thing that you used to be insecure about that you're no longer insecure about?
Oh, I don't know. What am I insecure about? I'm literally, guys, I'm not insecure about anything. No.
I'm the most secure person ever.
Honestly, I think it's like insecure about being insecure.
Oh, really? That's interesting. That's very meta.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. This came up because like, remember how I said there was a guy who asked me what my type was?
Mm-hmm.
So I asked him back, like, what's your type? And he's like, I like someone who's confident. So I was like, does that mean I can't like be insecure and like have like things I'm like concerned about and like things I think like it just got way too deep.
Wow, that's very in your head thinking.
It is.
Sure.
It is. We've grown.
Yeah.
We're okay now.
We're getting there. What's the fondest memory you had growing up?
Oh, building igloos with my cousins. Yeah, I grew up in Colorado, and so.
Oh, really?
Yeah, around like a ton of family, a ton of cousins.
What's one thing a guy could do to make you fall in love with him?
Make me laugh until I cry.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll fall hard.
Really?
Yeah.
So you like the funny guys?
I like funny. I like good music taste.
Okay.
This is me. I'm just describing me.
You're just reflecting yourself?
No, literally. I'm like, oh, they work out. Like, oh, they're empathetic. No, yeah.
You killed it.
Yay!
All right. I just want to say special thanks to our amazing guest, Hannah. Let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, so you guys can find my podcast at bulgogi.podcast on Instagram. We're on all listening platforms, including YouTube, TikTok. We're not on Snapchat, but literally everything else. And then you can personally find me at Hanakattt. That's Hanakatt on every single platform. And yeah, this was so great. Thank you so much.
Glad you had a good time. Anytime. You're welcome back too.
Okay,
Just let you know.
Okay, great.
We got to update some dating stories in the future.
Oh, yeah.
And thank you guys for watching all the way through. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment below what you guys want us to talk about next time. And remember, live fast,
eat ass.